Welcome to the weekly drip for the week of March 25th, 2017, where we look at the week's top software development news. Brought to you by Daily Drip, where this week's trending videos are on React Native, better understanding GraphQL and getting started with GraphQL, and Elm and Phoenix, two functional programming flavors that taste great together by Josh Adams, and two videos on R, Install Me Some R and Utility of Data Frames. Now let's hop into the news. Most developers use JavaScript and think of themselves as full-stack web developers. 72% of developers identify as working in a non-software industry. More than 25% of developers have 10 or more years of professional experience. Less than 8% of respondents identify themselves as female. For full results, see the Stack Overflow survey. And if you just want a brief overview, check out Quincy Larson's summary. A biannual rank of programming languages ranks the top 5 languages as JavaScript, Java, Python, PHP, and C#. JavaScript retained the top position while Python jumped up 3 spots in the ranking to 3rd, pushing PHP to the 4th spot. The data was mined from GitHub and Stack Overflow. Css Grid Support is here, allowing you to define responsive column and grid lines easily with clean markup. This is the first time CSS has had an intentional layout system. Unfortunately, global support is only around 12%, so it will be a few months before this can be your sole web layout engine. Eric Meyer wrote a great guide on adding grids to an existing project on A List Apart. Google is producing a new show, Designer vs. Developer, to help designers and developers understand their counterparts and best practices. The first episode has Mustafa Kurtullu speaking to Jake Archibald about designers and developers taking an active role in product development, not just being a cog in the machine. Mustafa also takes a quick look into the 5 phases of a design sprint. Angular 4.0 is now in general release. New features in Angular include server-side rendering, newer TypeScript support, smaller bundles, and source map. Skipping from 2.x to the 4.x series instead of 2.5 or 3.0 is due to a shift in semantic versioning. The code is available on GitHub. The asset pipeline is gone. Rails is embracing modern asset compilation via Yarn and Webpack. The Webpacker gem is currently only included in Rails 5.1.0 beta, which normally would suggest it's too early to report on. However, if a friend of mine failed to tell me about the moment I could abandon the asset pipeline, we would cease being friends. Samuel Mullen details this setup and use on the Pixelated blog. Note that you can use the new Webpack pipeline back to Rails 4.2. The latest Gitlab update adds subgroups, deploy boards, and continuous deployment. A year and a half after their previous major release, Gitlab moves to version 9.0. A popular alternative to GitHub, Gitlab is a toolchain to host, collaborate on, and deploy Git repositories with a significant open source community. Now let's take a look at our development dregs. First is the Ruby specification pattern, written by Sergey Makagon. Next is Shell Scripts Matter. Next is The Road to Resilient Web Design by Jeremy Keith. Loopy is released. It is a tool for thinking in systems. And also, How I Became a Better Programmer. All of the links are available in the show notes. If you want to take a deep dive into CSS grids, take a look at some of these links. Learning CSS Grid Layout, A Complete Guide to Grid, Grid by Example by Rachel Andrew. Here's a video by her. And also another video, Start Using CSS Grid Layout, another video by Rachel Andrew. And here's another look at the CSS Grid browser support. And here is a practical comparison of CSS Grid and Flexbox. That's all for the weekly drip. Check out the Daily Drip Distillery to see what developers are interested in learning. Trending this week on the Daily Drip Distillery, Introduction to Crystal and CSS Flexbox. The Distillery is where Daily Drip users talk about what they'd like to learn. Check out the Distillery to propose topics that interest you and vote on proposals that you'd like to see covered. That's all. See you next week.